start. So very warm welcome to you all joining us today for this webinar with the Independent Office for Police Conduct. I think you probably all know me. For those who don't, I'm Aisling from Irish in Britain and I work in community development. I'll be in the background, so I'll just go through a bit of housekeeping. As you're probably all aware, this session is being recorded and it will be uploaded to our website as a learning resource after the session. So all attendees, you are on mute and your cameras are off, but we encourage participation and questions, and you can do either of those things in the chat box or the Q&A function, which should be at the bottom of your Zoom screen. So I'll be monitoring those throughout. So please do post any questions or contributions there. We will be holding a space for Q&A at the end of Derrick's presentation. So we are delighted to be joined by Derrick Campbell today and his colleague Amanda Hill. Derrick Campbell is the Regional Director for the Midlands Region of the Independent Office for Police Conduct. Just make sure I said that fully and correct. He's responsible for overseeing 13 police forces, and a large proportion of Derrick's work is stakeholder engagement. Involves reaching out to communities to assist them to know their rights and help to provide a better understanding of the role of the IOPC and how the organisation can help the public. So without further ado, I think I'll probably bring in Derrick now to start today's session and start his presentation. So over to you, Derrick.
Morning, everyone, and thank you very much for joining us today. I know your time is very valuable and precious, and I'm really pleased that you're able to, join us today. Derrick Campbell, as Ling has already mentioned, I'm joined with my colleague Amanda, and really, I just want the opportunity to talk to you all and to listen to your questions and do my best to answer and inform you about our organisation, what we do, and how we actually work and support yourselves. I've got two presentations, and then I'm going to allow times for question and answers. The first presentation talks about who we are, who am I, what we do, why am I here talking to you. And the second presentation will be looking at stop and search. It affects everyone in this country at some point, or can do at some point, and it's a really controversial policing power. And I just want to inform and give you information on how that power should be used and how it should not be used, and inform you about those things. So I know time is always against us, so let me just press on with the first presentation. Just talk about who am I, what's my organisation, why do we exist, and what do we do. So the first part of my presentation, who are we? So we were brought into existence following the investigation by Lord Macpherson in 2000, following an investigation into, or a failed investigation into, the death of Stephen Lawrence, who was killed by 6 white racist thugs in 1993. He was stabbed to death at a bus stop, and when his friend who was with him, Dwayne, ran to the police station, he was out of breath and he was saying, "Please come and help me, my friend's been stabbed by 6 guys." The police arrested him. Instead of going and investigating, they left Stephen Lawrence to die and bleed to death while they were investigating this guy who was asking for help. His mum got involved, Doreen Lawrence, and father Neville Lawrence, and a campaign over 7 years or 6 years resulted in Lord Macpherson investigating Metropolitan Police, and Lord Macpherson in 2000 found that the Metropolitan Police was institutionally racist. And what that means, it doesn't mean that the police officers themselves are racist, but it means the very structure of the way the police was set up, its policies, its procedures, the way it went about policing was institutionally racist and discriminated against Black and minority ethnic communities, young people in particular, and BME communities, the Irish, the travellers, the Asians, the Africans, everybody who is non-white, indigenous to this country. The system was designed against them. He then said this has to change, and as a result, there was an organisation called Liberty who was part of his panel, and they recognised that the current police watchdog or oversight body, the Police Complaints authority, really had no power. It wasn't set up with any power, and effectively the police who are very powerful, nobody could hold them accountable. Nobody could examine what they did. There was no independent scrutiny. And the law had to change to ensure that the police, who was given loads and loads of power by us as a community and society, they were doing what they wanted and nobody could touch them. So the law was changed in 2003. The Independent Office for Police Conduct, Independent Police Complaints Commission, as was brought into being. They were given huge powers, similar powers to the police, to allow them to police the police. They were called the IPCC. They investigated complaints. They were able to be very intrusive. The police had a legal requirement and duty to cooperate with them. In essence, the IPCC was the police's police. So they policed the police, and they could arrest the police, etc. They could lock them up. They could charge them with murder. You know, they could do a lot of things, but there were still some limitations on how far they could go. So they continued, and there were some big failures as well, in mistakes in investigations. Things weren't done properly. And there was a requirement for them to be tested again to see whether how their way set up was appropriate. If not, we need to change them. So in 2018, the IPCC was scrapped, removed from the statute books, and in the same month, January 2018, a new organisation replacing the IPCC, called the Independent Office for Police Conduct, came into existence with a lot of similar powers, but a few more. So they had what we call the power of initiative, which simply means I could be watching the TV, I could see something on the TV that I'm not happy about. I can start to investigate that without the police knowing. I would then tell them, and they would have to send me all the details. Why is that new? Why is that? What's so big? What's the big deal? Previously, we couldn't do that. We would have to wait for the police to decide to send it in, and then we'd be able to investigate. We weren't happy with that because there were concerns about, were they sending us the right things? Were they hiding things from us? All these things we had to change to make us a lot more efficient. Indeed, even the way we investigated had to change. So that's the Independent Office of Police Conduct. We police the police. We have huge powers. We can do all the covert surveillance. We can arrest them, as I said before. We can investigate them, and they can't escape. They can't refuse to cooperate with us. So if I ask them a question, they've got to tell me. If they don't tell me, I can lock them up. I can arrest them. I can lock them up. I can charge them with obstructing my investigation, which is a criminal offence. So they really have no obligation. They hated us in the beginning, but who cares? That's life. We're here to ensure the public are protected and that we can build confidence. We only cover England and Wales. There's 43 police forces. We also oversee the behaviour of the police and crime commissioners and their deputies, the Mayor of London and his deputy, sorry, the British Transport Police, Her Majesty's Border Agency. So the people who check your passports, we oversee them, the National Crime Agency, immigration functions. So, for example, we also oversee the Gangmasters and Licensing Abuse Authority, who look at gangmasters who bring people over to pick strawberries, cockle shells, etc. We oversee their behaviour. And also the nuclear constabulary part of the MOD. So we have a huge remit, but just for England and Wales. On average, to put a scale on that, there's about 230,000 police officers or officers that we oversee. They generate on average about 34,000 complaints against them each year. We only investigate about 450. So we will only investigate the ones that have the cases that have the most impact on society. Police shootings, people who die in custody, road traffic incidences, corruption, abuse of power for sexual purposes, etc. So the ones that have the biggest impact. So you can see the vast majority of investigations and complaints are dealt with by the police service themselves, and I'll explain how that works. So that's roughly our remit. who we oversee. We don't cover Scotland, we don't cover Northern Ireland because they have their own separate oversight bodies, but we only cover England and Wales. That's a little bit about the history, and I'm happy to share this PowerPoint as a resource so you can read this at your own leisure. Our primary role is to improve public confidence in the police and indeed in us. Under the new regime, we have one person who runs the organisation called the Director General, Michael Lockwood. There are 6 non-executive directors. They seek to hold him, challenge him to make sure he behaves properly. His team consists of 5 regional directors, of which I am one, a director for Wales, another director for strategy and impact, resourcing people, and we have a legal council who advises us. So that's our management structure, and that's where I sit as one of the 5 regional directors under the Director General. This is sort of how the 2 countries are broken up. You can see mine is the green one, so you can see I've got a really big area, and you can see all the different forces that I oversee, and it's a massive area. The red is where Wales, you can see the southeast, etc. That's sort of how we are structured across the country. What do we look at? We look at complaints. What's a complaint? Any expression of dissatisfaction. I am unhappy with the way this police officer spoke to me. I'm unhappy with the way this police officer looked at me. Whatever you are unhappy about is considered a complaint. It's as open as that. Doesn't have to be anything specific. It's any form of dissatisfaction. We also look at the conduct of police officers. Did they behave professionally? Did they abuse their powers? We look at the way they conduct themselves. And of course, we look at the very serious end, such as did somebody die while in police contact or following police contact? Did they receive a serious injury? Those are the things that we will examine to see whether the police behaved properly or whether there is an issue. I will answer questions in a little while, so please put them in the question box and I'll come back to them in a moment. So please just feed your questions in for me to answer. There are certain things that they have to send to us. They don't have a choice. They can't look at it themselves. They've got to send it to us, so that it's our responsibility to examine them. So all deaths and serious injuries, all complaints, or what we call recordable conduct matters, including allegations of. So anything that is classed within the legislation as something to be recorded as a defined complaint, we call those recordable conduct matters. So if a police officer seriously assaults somebody, sexually abuses somebody, there is corruption, there's criminal behavior, there's discrimination, racism, all those things, they have to send them to us so that we can examine them. And we are independent of the police. We're not the police. We've never been the police. We employ some ex-police officers, but they are not in the policing capacity. They're retired and they are working for me. I have never worked for the police by law. I could never ever have worked for the police. So I'm independent. I'm not the police, a product of the police. I'm independent, and so is the whole organisation. When we get a referral, we look at it, we see whether it meets the criteria for us to look at. If we don't think it meets the criteria, in other words, it's not serious enough, or it doesn't meet the mandatory requirement, we send it back to the police and say, we've looked at it, we're happy for you to continue to use your own investigative powers to examine this. And then we will say, tell us what the findings are at the end of your investigation. Remember, we look at a very small number, the most serious ones. The majority of complaints are dealt with by the police. And we ensure that there is a process in place to make sure that those investigations they look at, we still have a way of examining to make sure that they're not mishandling those and that they're also examined properly. At the end of our investigation, there are 2 things. We learn, and we also help the police to learn to improve the way that they police society. We're not about just blaming, because that doesn't really help. We want change. And we're not one of these organisations that keeps on saying lessons have been learned. What lessons have been learned? How do we know how to improve it? That's not our game. We want to make sure by holding them, challenging them, looking at them, tell us what you've done with this information and show us how you've changed things. And if you don't, we're going to name and shame you, and we're going to tell everybody, and indeed we'll take action if we think you're not doing what you should do. And we also expect to hold officers accountable for their behaviour. If we think that they've misbehaved themselves, then we will try and get them dismissed from the force, sanctions held against them, warnings. And indeed, at the other end, if they've committed a criminal act, we'll get them before a judge for them to be sent to prison. That is happening on a regular basis. Every week, someone's been sacked, or indeed, people have been sent to courts, and indeed a few of them have been sent to prison. So we really do have teeth, and you can look at all these outcomes on our website. If you have an investigation and you're not happy with it, you don't think the police have handled it properly, you can appeal. You can either appeal to the IOPC, us, or you appeal to the Police and Crime Commissioner. They are the two bodies that can look at the police's behaviour, and if we don't think they've investigated your complaint properly, then we can investigate, we can force them to do it again. If we're not happy that they've done it properly or they won't do what they've been told, we can take action against them, and we can re-investigate the investigation and make sure it's done correctly. So again, just showing we have huge powers to try and bring justice and fairness to people who feel that they've not been handled properly. Again, part of what I'm doing is to talk to you and talk to other people, to share what we do, who we are, and how we do it. And we do that through meeting people. We get people to talk to us and tell us how they think we're getting on. We try to talk to young people. We do a lot of work around research and mental health, discrimination, all those things. And indeed, we have other external bodies who talk to us and hold us accountable to make sure that even we, as the police watchdog, that we're doing our work properly. And part of today's webinar is to share with you and to invite you again to talk to us. And indeed, if you don't think things are going right, tell us so we know, so we can try and change and put things right and make things better. So that's in essence who we are, what we do, why we do it. That talks about the range of our powers. It talks about the scope. It talks about who we oversee and what we try to achieve when we do our role. I'm just now going to look at some of the questions before I go to the second presentation. Great, nothing just yet. So as I say, please feel free to put your questions in the box, and I will just try and change my screen. Ailing, am I still okay?
Yeah, you're fine, Derek. I just came on because I just have a question here.
Please go for it. Yeah.
If we have the space to ask that now, that'd be great.
Go for it.
We just have a question that says, what measures are being taken to inform traveller community and others of your role and support?
So one of the things that I've done, trying to get you back on the screen, or what we're currently doing, we're doing sessions like this. I've done a few podcasts with the British, the Gypsy Roma Traveller organisations, with the Irish community. I'm working with some local groups, some regional groups, some national stakeholders. And this is part of that rolling out process to try and get the message out. So for the last couple of years, I've been popping up here and there, trying my best to engage with organisations such as this one, because you are very, very important to us, indeed important to me with my history. So this is part of the things that we're doing to try and talk to people. And again, it's an open invitation. I'll come anywhere. I'll meet you anywhere. I'm more than happy to talk to anyone who will find that helpful.
Oh, that's fantastic. Thank you, Derek. I mean, you can catch up after this and maybe I can send around some more information.
Absolutely.
That's great. Thank you very much. Yeah.
So I will now try and can someone just give me a shout? Can anybody see this screen? Is that right, or have I messed up again?
I can't. Are you sharing at the moment, Derek? Or
right. Just let me get my technical head back on and see if I know. I try and pretend to see if I know what I'm doing. So I'm not sure that
That's all right.
Right. I've lost me webinar thing now, haven't I? Oh dear.
No worries.
Give me a second. Let me just get me on the screen on.
Your time. If there's any more questions, feel free to put them in the chat or the Q&A box.
Right. Okay. Right. So I'm going to do that one. I'm going to share my screen. I'm going to do that. Hopefully that should pop up on there. I'm not sure.
That's perfect. We've got a questions screen there.
Right. So yeah, that's correct. So I'm now going to try and do that to be a presentation, which I have no idea how to do it from this screen. Give me a second.
You're all right.
Right, okay. Right, okay. Is that better?
Yeah, that's absolutely perfect, Derrick. Thank you.
Thank you. Like, let's carry on. So that first screen is some of the typical questions I get asked when I do my roadshow. You know, what's your role? Can you explain? I've done that in the previous slide. What should we do if something isn't right or doesn't feel right? I'll talk about that at the end of this presentation. We didn't know about the IOPC. How can people find out information about us? Again, I'll share that with you at the end of this presentation. Stop and search is a big concern for lots of people, particularly young people in Black and minority ethnic communities. You know, how can we challenge? How do we know what our rights are? This presentation will help inform that. Now, and if I'm not happy, how do I make a complaint? I'll talk about that as well as part of this presentation. And how can people confidently use their voice when things don't feel right? You know, most people get intimidated by the police because indeed they are the legal representative of the Crown, of the state. They are there to protect us, and they have powers to you know, affect our liberty. So you know, they are powerful. They are very, very powerful. They can cause a lot of challenges for us. But what are my rights? Let's go into this presentation and let's see if we can learn a little bit more about that. So stop and search. It's a real biggie, and a lot of people get really worried about this. What are my rights? I'm a citizen. I live in this country. It's not a police state. You know, I don't have to carry an ID card to show who I am. You know, I'm a free citizen, and I can move about with liberty and freedom. But these people in uniforms can suddenly stop me or kick my front door down or stop my car. What do I do? You know, why are they doing that? Are they entitled to do that? Should they do that? On what grounds can they do that? So let's look at this subject a bit better. So stopped and searched does not mean you are in trouble. When you are stopped and searched, that does not mean that you're in trouble. It simply means you are being required or requested to help. That's the simple definition of stop and search. If a police officer stops you and searches you, you are a citizen of this country, and the police are agents of this country, and their role, with permission from us, the community, society, we've said we're going to give these individuals special powers to protect us. Part of that process is that a police officer can come up to us and ask us to help to investigate a crime or to prevent a crime. So stop and search is not bad. How it's done is where the issue comes. So just because you are stopped doesn't mean you're in trouble. It's a request for help. So the law says police officers have the power to stop, detain, and search you without arresting you. You're not under arrest. That's a whole different issue. I'll talk about that in a second. But if a police officer comes up to you, they are legally, and they have a right. They have the law telling them and giving them the power to stop me and you. They can hold me and stop me going to where I want to go, and they can search me. That's the law. That's a country in which we live. They can do that. We've told them they can do that through our laws. An officer must also have reasonable grounds to stop you. So a police officer can't just do it because he feels like it or she feels like it. They have to explain and provide the reasonable grounds for stopping you. So an example, I'm walking down the road, I've got my black t-shirts on, I've got my jogging pants on, my training pumps, and I'm walking down the road. A police officer could come up to me and say, "Excuse me, sir, can I talk to you for a moment?" One of two things can happen. I can say nothing, or one of three things. I can say nothing, keep on going. I can say, go away. No, I don't want to talk to you. Or I can stop and say, yeah, what's the problem? If I try to run off, the police then changes their approach because now I am now acting suspiciously. They've approached me. I am now acting suspiciously. If I'm now acting suspiciously, that police officer will probably think, I've got something to hide. Why have I run off? That police now can chase me, can arrest me for failure to comply with a lawful request. So by me not cooperating, can make that police officer believe that I am potentially guilty or acting certainly suspicious. That police officer now does not have to behave in the way they previously did, but they can now use reasonable force to detain me because I've refused to cooperate. That again is within their right. If they stop me and I cooperate, they have to explain why they're detaining a free citizen, and it has to be justifiable. So if a police officer says, I'm stopping you, and you say, why are you stopping me? And he says, because I feel like it, or because you're black, or you're Irish, or you're a traveller, that police officer's broken the law. They now are in trouble because they've committed a potential criminal offence. If the police officer gives you a reason and it is still, you don't believe it's justified, I think you was walking a bit funny, or, I didn't like the colour of your trousers. Again, the officer hasn't got reasonable grounds. Your next question is, am I under arrest? If the officer says yes, what am I being arrested for? If they can't give a reason, you can make a formal complaint, and indeed you don't have to go with that police officer. If the police officer says you're not under arrest, you're entitled to walk away and carry on with your life. If they cannot give you reasonable grounds, you can leave that police officer, you can walk away. If the police officer places their hand on you or does anything to touch you after they have made it clear you're not under arrest and the grounds are not reasonable, that police officer has committed a criminal offence. It is an imprisonable offence with up to 6 months in prison, because that officer is no longer operating with the protection of the law that protects police officers. They are now abusing their power and they've committed a criminal offence. Many people don't know that. If it's not reasonable, they haven't got justifiable grounds, you're entitled to go. If they then touch you, they've then broken the law. Be very careful how you do that. If a police officer stops you and says, we have had a recent inquiry of a burglary or a shoplifting or an assault, and you fit the description of the person we're looking for, that is reasonable grounds. They can ask you your name, they can ask you where you're going, because what they're trying to do is to eliminate you as the suspect. You cooperate, you're not the person, they thank you for your cooperation, you can carry on with your life. That in essence is how we should work, because we are citizens and we have a moral duty to try and help to protect society. Reasonable grounds, you seem to fit the description of somebody the police is looking for. Your behaviour and actions are suspicious. For example, your behaviour could be taken as a sign that you are in possession of prohibited items, drugs, weapons, etc. And that is reasonable grounds for them to talk to you. So if you ask them, why are you stopping me? They've got to give you something that you believe as, well, actually, that's reasonable. How can I help? Those are some examples. These are some of the powers the police have when they're using stop and search. Section 1 of the Police and Crime Act, PACE, the extent of the search, they can search a person or search of a person and their vehicle. So they can stop you, they can stop your vehicle, and they can just check to make sure you're not carrying drugs or weapons. And that's the power that they're using. They can do this in a public place. What are they looking for? Stolen or prohibited articles, weapons, fireworks, anything that can cause a criminal offence or damage. That's what that power is used for. Section 23, the Misuse of Drug Acts, again, they can search a person or a vehicle anywhere, anytime. They can pull you over, they can stop you, and they're looking for drugs. That's the power they're using. Section 47, the Firearms Act, again, they can search a person or their vehicle, and they can do that in public. They're looking for guns or anything that can cause harm to anybody else. They don't have to do anything special. They can stop you in the middle of the high street, anywhere that they want. And if they're enacting those powers, and you're entitled to ask them, well, what powers are you using? And they've got to tell you, I'm using the Section 1 PACE, Section 23, looking for drugs, or Section 47, I'm looking for weapons. Those are reasonable and they're entitled to do that. they can do that. Section 60, criminal justice and policing order. So this is an order that was specifically designed originally to police football matches where we had lots of hooligans, and it was an exclusion just for a period of time around a specific geographic area. It cannot and must not be used for anything other than that. Unfortunately, we have found in our work that that is used more extensively than it should be. So the police misuse this power, and we're making sure that they don't. So they don't need any reasonable grounds for the Section 60. I'll come to your questions in a minute. Please put them in the box. Intelligence has revealed serious violence is about to take place, so they've been told that something's going to kick off. They can enact that power. The power is granted by a higher ranked officer. So it used to be an inspector. I think it's now gone to a superintendent to authorize a Section 60. It takes place in a certain geographic area, so it will only be with a small radius, for example, round a football stadium or in a specific couple of streets. It can't be used for the city, it can't be used for the whole country. It is a specific power, and it only has a time limit of how long it can stay in force. So it may be from, you know, I don't know, 4 o'clock in the afternoon till 10 o'clock at night. That's it. When the football match is about to, the crowds are coming in, the crowds are going home. After that time limit, you cannot use the power. If they do anything claiming Section 60 outside of that or before that time, they're in breach of the law. They can't do that. Stop and account. So a police officer approaches you. Am I obliged to give this information? So they say, what are you doing? Shall I ask, is this a stop and search? You're in an area, or where you are, where are you going? These are the questions that you can ask when they ask you this question. I should be polite, otherwise I could, as you know, end up in the wrong side of the police officers. You know, will you get in trouble? Of course. You know, what are you carrying? So the answer is, are you obliged to give information? What you're doing, you're trying to help eliminate you as a suspect, or to show that you are a law-abiding citizen. If you fail to cooperate, then the police can take you to the police station and detain you, to question you. It's always easier to be polite, to answer the questions. The quicker we get through, the quicker we can move on. They have a job to do. We have a duty to try and help them do their job and to keep everybody safe. So are you obliged to tell you what you're doing? Well, if they think you're a criminal, it's better to say, I'm not a criminal, I'm going home, I'm going shopping, I'm going to buy my partner their birthday card. It's a simple question, a simple response. Shall I ask if this is a stop and search? Yes, you absolutely should. Why? What is this? Is this a stop and search? What is this? They will tell you, sir, we're stopping you, or ma'am, we're stopping you because of blah, blah, blah. They can ask you why you're here, where you're going. Again, they will have reasonable grounds to ask those questions. If you don't think it's reasonable, you can challenge and you don't have to cooperate. If they cannot give you reasonable grounds, you're not required to cooperate. Sorry, why are you talking to me? I just feel like it. See ya, you can walk away. And there's nothing they can do. Should you be polite? Absolutely. It's always better to be polite. But again, you don't have to say anything if you don't want to. But if you don't say anything, again, that could raise suspicion. This officer then would be perfectly entitled to say, I think you're behaving unreasonable or suspiciously. You're not cooperating with me here. I'd like you to come down to the station. At that point, they can arrest you if you refuse, because you've now moved from being polite and trying to cooperate. You've now moved in the mind of this police officer into a suspect, or at least somebody behaving suspiciously. They then can enact, they can step up and use greater powers, because they really want to examine you to see whether you are bona fide or, again, a suspect. Types of searches. So when they stop me, what can they do? Just give me a minute while I check the new stop and search laws. So that in public, they can just do a pat down. They can do a general search. They can take off your hat, ask you to remove your hat and your gloves, your scarf. They can pat you to check your pockets. They can't do any, they can just touch your waistband. They can't do any more than that in a public arena. It can be carried out by anybody, and you can take off your overcoat, you can take off your gloves, your hat, your scarf, but that's as much they can do in public. They cannot do any more than that in public. If they want to do a more thorough search, to touch your body, your person, so if they want to do more than take off your outer clothes, that has to be carried out somewhere in private, out of the public eye, and it needs to be by the same gender. So if you're a female, it would have to be done by a female officer. If you're a male, it would have to be done by a male officer. There is only one exception. Where there is a risk to flight to life, it doesn't matter who that officer is, the gender. If you are a danger to yourself or the public, it overrides that requirement, because they are then trying to save life, and it will trump everything else. If they want to do a strip search is very, very intrusive. They would have to, it should be carried out in a police station, so that they have to transport you to a police station. It absolutely has got to be the same gender as the individual. Again, if you're a female, it will be a female. If you're a male, the male officer. It can be done with more than one officer present for safeguarding. It will be in a restricted cell designed for strip search. If you are under 18, that it can only be done with a guardian or a parent, and they'll be asked to come into the station for that strip search to be carried out. You can have a medical practitioner do the search, because it may involve entering the person's body. If people are concealing drugs within their body, you would then need to be examined by a medical person, or indeed a highly trained officer designed to carry out. They're not nice, they're horrible, but the law gives the police the powers to do these things, and that is the law. What are you required to give if you're asked to give information? What information are you required to give? You can give your name, your address, your date of birth. You don't have to give your ethnicity if you don't want to. You know, what is it that what can you do to help? You can give your name, you can give your date of birth, etc., etc. You can tell them where where you're going. Very simple. Apart from that, you're not required to give them any more information at all. You don't have to tell anything more than that. You can give them your name, and even your name and address. You don't have to give them, but as I said again, you are being asked to help. And I would always advise that you do as much as you can, but don't go over the top, because you're not required to. Again, this is a simple, process that you can go through in your mind. We say go wisely. So you can use this, and the police use this as well, and you can use this. So these are the questions that you should go through in your mind. The grounds for the search, what's the purpose of the search? Do you have a warrant card to prove that you are police? I want to see who you are. Where's your identification epaulets? Can I call the station to check that you're real? Yes, you can. You can stop the police officer, I'd like to talk to your supervisor. They can contact them on the radio. They can give you a phone number there and then, and you can ring to say, look, I've been stopped by Derrick Campbell. He's claimed to be a police officer. Here's his badge number. Or he's got no ID or whatever. What do I do? And they will tell you, this is okay, it's legitimate, or actually, we don't know who that person is. You're entitled to walk away or get away from that person. So they must show you a warrant card. They must identify themselves. They must tell you what station they're from. They must tell you your entitlement. You are required to. You can remain silent. You don't have to say anything if you don't really want to. They must tell you what powers they're using, and they will explain if you are being arrested. If you're not arrested or under arrest, then you're entitled to walk away and leave. It's as simple as that. Remember, in a search, stay calm, give good eye contact, ask questions, find out, make sure you're satisfied. Ask for evidence that you've been stopped and searched. Tell them you want some documentation to prove who this person is and the reason why you were stopped and searched. Be confident and make sure that you can hold this police officer accountable by getting their identification number, by getting their name, by finding at the station. If you don't think they've treated you properly, please make a complaint. Make a complaint. Okay, body worn cameras. They will have cameras on them. Ask for the cameras to be switched on before they do anything. Before they talk, can you please put your camera on? That captures everything. These officers do not have control over the cameras. So please don't think they can go and delete it or alter it. No, they cannot. Believe me, they cannot. You are equally entitled to video the contact yourself, or somebody can. What you cannot do is interfere with legal police business by, you know, trying to say, well, stand back, I want to film it. You can't do any of that because you are being challenged by a police officer. But somebody can film the interaction, and indeed you can record the interaction yourself. If a police officer tries to stop you, they themselves are committing a crime. They're not allowed to stop you videoing them. Equally, you're not allowed to stop them videoing you. That's the way the law sits. Know your rights. If you want to complain, you can go to the police station and make a complaint. You can go onto the website, just type in police complaint. We will pop up. You can write to the Police and Crime Commissioner. You can go into the police station. You can ring my office. You can go via a solicitor. There are lots of ways to complain. If you put the IOPC or make a complaint against the police on the internet, my organisation will come up. There's a phone number that you can call. There's an email that you can send information to, and we'll send these to you after this presentation. Again, contact us, make a complaint, and then we will have it looked at for you. Do officers have to be in uniform to stop and search you? No. But if they do stop you and they're plain clothes police, they must have something to prove that they are police. They must show their warrant card with their badge. They must put a hat on. They must put a jacket on with the word police on it so that you know that they're police. The only way that would not happen is if an off-duty police officer is walking by, sees a crime being taken place, they then put themselves on duty. They may not have any protective equipment or any ID, but once they say, I'm a off-duty police officer, then of course you've got to be satisfied that they are, but they are entitled to engage you, and indeed they can show their evidence after. But again, if you're not happy with who they are and you strike an off-duty police officer or try to get away, it's very unlikely that you would ever be criminalized, because if they didn't identify themselves, you really don't know who they are, and you're entitled by law to defend yourself. So the police know it's in their best interest to show you and make you aware that they are legitimate police officers. Under the search, what should you do? Again, stay calm, check for evidence, be assured, etc. So again, depending on the search, if it's a general search, a pat down in public, if it's a more intrusive, in private, if it's a strip search, to the station. What do officers need to have to carry out a stop and search? Reasonable grounds, reasonable suspicion. What does go wisely stand for? We've done that already, then it's in the PowerPoint. And what is a Section 60 search? Again, limited, geographic, with a time limit for specific reasons. So that's the end of my presentation. I'll share this presentation with you again, and you can look at it again. And indeed, I'm more than happy to look at it. Shall I look at these questions now, Aileen, or do you want to run through them yourself?
Sorry, say that again, Derrick.
You want to take me through the questions, or shall I just read them off?
I can put them to you, Derrick, if that's easier.
Yeah, please go. And I'll stop sharing my screen. Perfect,
thank you. Okay, so just I have a few in the chat. I'm just going to go backwards, but I'll get to everybody's. So in terms of if you are stopped and searched and you do willingly give your details, so your name, perhaps your address, your ethnicity, any other personal details, if nothing comes of the stop and search and you go about your day, we have a question there saying, are those details held? Do they go on any sort of record?
Nothing at all. Nothing at all. So if the police officer stops me, your name, Derrick Campbell, your age, 21, which is not true, and the officer there and then will radio confirm that you're not the person they're looking for. They'll say, thank you for your cooperation. It goes, it does not get recorded. The only time any information can ever be recorded about a person is if they are charged with a crime, their biometrics, fingerprints, DNA swab. They are kept up until the trial, if it goes to trial. If the person is not convicted or is indeed found innocent and not linked to that crime, all of your personal information by law must be removed. Unfortunately, the police like to keep all our data with Big Brother. If you find, and you are entitled to contact, even now, even if you've never been stopped and searched, you're entitled to contact the police station and say, I want you to tell me what information you have on me. They are legally required to do that. And if you find that they have information, then indeed you can ask for it to be removed. If they don't remove it, you can take them to court and get the judge to force them to remove it.
Thank you, Derek. And does the same go for anything that would have been captured on the body cam in your exchange with somebody in a
Correct.
stop?
Yes, it has. It only stays there for 30 days if it is not evidential. So the body camera footage is kept for 30 days. It's then automatically deleted off the system. And believe me, it is, because I've proven it. The only way it will not be deleted is if there is an ongoing investigation. They are then required. They can keep that for up to 7 years, or until the conclusion of the trial or the investigation. If it is that you're innocent, it's removed. If it is that you are guilty, obviously it will be kept.
Okay, brilliant. Thank you for that, Derek. We have a question here that says, do you have any role regarding support to develop policies, as West Midlands Police do not currently have a GRT policy as Freedom of Information 21.1.22 other than within joint protocols? And do you see this as a gap? And if you have no role, how can this be addressed?
We have a role and we're currently addressing it. The way it works is part of my job is to gather information. We've had a number of presentations from the Jitsi Traveller community. We've had that report you spoke about. We've had some shocking reports from Parliament, almost vilifying the communities, the traveller community. We've challenged that. We are currently challenging some of these through the relevant bodies. Now, the police service in West Midlands are not the body that changes policy or writes policy. Policy for the police are done via the College of Policing, the government, and they are the bodies that write policies for the police. So we represent and make a representation. We're concerned about this. We lobby them, we tell them what the problem is, and we require them to do something about it. We then hold them accountable for those policies via the Association of Police and Crime Commissioners, through Her Majesty's Inspectorate of Constabulary and Fire and Rescue Services, and indeed through us. So we are the three: HMRC FRS, Her Majesty's Inspectorate of Constabulary and Fire and Rescue Service, Independent Office of Police Conduct, Association of Police and Crime Commissioners, and we hold the College of Policing and the government responsible and accountable for changing the policy. So that's the process. Once the policies change, the police service then have to comply. The problem we have is that the College of Policing and the government have not yet got their act together to change those policies. So what we need is local MPs, local politicians, police and crime commissioners who you need to talk to, because we can't do it for you, to get the government and the College of Policing to change those policies. So we need you to help us continue to put pressure on.
Okay, thank you, Derek. And then just following on from, I suppose, the question saying that no information is held if you're stopped and searched. Someone's made a good point here in the chat that says, if someone is stopped regularly, perhaps a disproportionately amount of time, if nothing's held, there's no evidence to show that they might be being, I suppose, unfairly targeted or disproportionately stopped. How would somebody communicate if they were stopped again to an officer that this happens regularly and that they're feeling intimidated? How would somebody kind of navigate that situation?
So as part of my presentation, you would have seen that every time you're stopped, you should get a record of that encounter. There is your evidence base, because you now have a record. Here's my record. You probably won't count in your pocket, but you can make a complaint to say, hang on a minute, I've been stopped 13 times in the last 4 weeks. What's going on? You're either harassing me, picking on me. It's down then to the police. So if that was to happen, for example, you would contact the police to say, I'm being harassed or I'm being unfairly targeted or whatever. They would have to investigate that and come up with a good answer as to why they keep stopping you. If they don't have a good answer or you're not satisfied with that, you come to us. We would then ask on your behalf, what the hell are you doing? Why are you bothering this person? And if they don't have a reasonable answer, we will tell them to stop it. If they don't stop it, we will take action against them, because clearly if there's no reason for them to do it, they are clearly discriminating, harassing, intimidating, and that is a criminal offence, and we will take action against them.
Thank you, Derek. And I suppose along the same thread of that, if an officer does stop you and cites reasonable grounds, but you really question whether that's actually just a bias or discrimination, what would your advice be? Would it be to comply in the moment and then perhaps make a complaint?
Comply in the moment and then make a complaint.
Okay.
Because if you don't comply in the moment, you then give them another excuse which may be more legal, as opposed to the potential, I don't know, use the wrong word, but the one that may not be justified.
Right. Okay. And for stop and search, just something that's come to mind. Are there any safeguards or protocols, I suppose, for people that may have mental health problems or learning difficulties, or even language barriers at the point of stop and search? What would be the process then for people who may not understand fully the process or what's being said to them?
So the answer to that is yes. If the police, if a person hasn't got the capacity to understand what's going on, the police obviously still have a legal duty to find out what's going on. They will have to there are safeguards in place, so they may have to bring that person to the station, bring some, do the necessary checks, bring the safeguards in place to protect that vulnerable person. Sorry, so to mental health. If there's a language barrier, they will bring interpreters. They can have access to interpreters on the phone. They just call them up. We've got someone from Croatia, Russia, whatever it may be. Probably Russia's a wrong example, but certainly whoever, and they will have interpreters on the radio talking to the person. Again, if they're a minor under 18, again, there has to be an appropriate adult. They may still bring that person to a station, but they cannot do anything with that minor until the guardian or parent comes to supervise what's taking place.
Okay, so you're entitled to an advocate, an interpreter,
Absolutely.
or an appropriate adult before any action, any search or any. Okay, all right.
And anything they do without the presence of a appropriate person speaking the language, mental health support, a parent or guardian, anything they do up to that point is illegal and is not admissible.
Okay, perfect. Thank you, Derek. And then just another question here. What support can we as individuals and organisations put in place to help the IOPC message?
Just help share the word. Or you can, what I'm asking is a big ask is talk about us. Tell people you've spoken to us, you've heard us do a presentation, share this resource. You know, tell people to look at our website, you know, let people know that there is an organisation out here who will listen, who will help, who will do what we can. We are not the police. We are not here to be the police. We want the police to behave properly. We've seen the police, unfortunately, abuse their position, disproportionately targeting Gypsy Roma travellers, disproportionately targeting Black and minority ethnic communities, disproportionately targeting young people. We are not here to allow them to continue with that. We want a good police service. We want to make sure they do their job properly, keep us safe, but we don't give you a license to take advantage of us. So we will stop that where we find it.
Perfect. Thank you, Derek. And just in terms of the process itself, how accessible or easy, I suppose, is it to raise an issue with the IOPC? Is it a matter of a phone call? Do you have any sort of time scales in terms of when you can expect to have your complaint acknowledged and that sort of thing?
So there's a legal process which we are bound by. It's really, really easy to make a complaint. It's a simple phone call. Help, my name is Derrick. I'm not happy with my contact with the police today. You know, he swore at me, or I think he unfairly targeted me. Where did it happen? That's all you need to do. We will take it from there.
Okay.
You know, it's as simple as that. What we want people to do is to feel confident. We're trying to make ourselves as easily accessible to everyone as possible. So whatever you think we could do to make that even better, tell us.
Perfect. Thank you so much, Derek. I don't think there's any more questions now in the chat, unless anyone has any last minute questions there. No. So Derek, it's okay to share your slides, isn't it? And we have the recording, so if anyone's missed it or indeed wants to watch it again or share it with their groups, we'd encourage that. And Derek, me and you can, I suppose, speak after this and we can arrange if there's any more sessions or anything for particular groups. I know that you'd be open to that. And yeah, a massive thank you to you, Derek. That was really insightful, and thank you to everyone who came for all your questions. So yeah, I think we'll probably close this session now, and yeah, massive thank you to you, and thank you to Amanda as well. That was absolutely brilliant. Thank you for your time, Derek. Thank you, everyone.
Take care, everybody.
All right.
Bye.
Take care now. Bye bye. See ya.